Hey, thanks for coming back. Let me apologize for for the video I made previous to this one yesterday, in which most of my head was missing, or parts of my head was missing, and so I've reframed it, and so it should be a better video today. Let me explain the reason for it. I'm going to talk about the state of Samadhi and how to get into it. And so then people that are just casually looking at this, I don't want to talk to them. So hopefully they've been discouraged and they're not coming back. Okay, we're going to talk about the cities today. This is where we get to that. Okay, so we've been talking, and we got up to 40 and 39. Let me just repeat 39. When non-greed is confirmed. So if you're in business, what does non-greed do? That means that you give a fair value for the work you do. When someone pays you money, it's because they've come to the recognition that what they're getting for their money is worth more than the money. Well, sometimes you will see that's not really true in business, and what you're getting is not worth the money. It may have value, but it's not what you thought it was. And I can go, there are so many things, and one of the things that I finally saw on CNBC, somebody came out and it was talking about, that's the cable show, about business, and it was talking about Yelp, which is online advertising, and people were being paid to write favorable reviews for companies. And why did they do that? It's because that their business increased 20%. Now, the product may or may not have been good, but it's illegal to do that. And for good reason, because it's a type of theft. To take people's confidence and do that. And one of the results is going to be eventually that people are going to go look for other sources of recommendation with blogs and stuff like that. You see that trend, and you see that trend continuing. And eventually this is all going to work out, and that people are going to find a source of truth. And in a way, that's what I'm doing. With this video, I'm telling people, okay, well, here's the truth, and you compare other people against this video. I don't mind if you do. I'm confident that the value that you get from this is more than worth your time. Okay, and we're going to talk about the cities, and let me go back to 39. We'll get to that in just a minute. When non-greed is confirmed, a thorough illumination of the how and why of one's birth comes. And what I said was, well, okay, go backwards. If you know what the issues are with your life and why, how and why you are in the circumstances from past karma, that's a sign that you've given up greed. Okay, so that's how you tell. By purification arises disgust for one's own body, for contact with other bodies. That's number 40. And I explained to you that now you're in a gilded cage, a golden cage. The bars may be made of gold, but they're bars nonetheless. And somehow this prevents you from being free. And to be really free means that you're free in spite of being in the body. That's what status of a Jiva Mukta is. Number 41. Besides all these benefits, you get wealthy, okay? You know what your past is like, why you're going through the stuff you're going through. Moreover, number 41, one gains purity of sattva, cheerfulness of mind, one-pointedness, mastery over the senses, and fitness for self-realization. You have to have a certain mental structure in order to go into self-realization. One is the absolute knowledge that you're more than the mind and body. Number 41, let's go see that. Okay. Then 42. By contentment, supreme joy is gained. And why is that? If you're not wanting anything, then the thing that you have gives you joy, to know who you are. Okay. Okay, number 43. By austerity, impurities of the body and senses are destroyed and occult power is gained. Okay, so mental purity means that you fill your mind with positive thoughts. Okay, so if you and to endure pain with the thought that this is going to improve your spiritual life, somehow is directly connected with occult powers. The direct meaning of tapas is to burn. By physical tapas of fasting, we burn our excess fat away along with the toxins our bodies have accumulated. By mental tapas, we burn all our old impressions. By verbal tapas, by observing silence, we control speech. Well, we haven't really talked about this type of tapasya, but if you go and you make a vow that you're not going to speak for a whole day, and you do this once a month or once a week, tremendous spiritual energy accumulates. So the control of speech is to undergo suffering. In order to make our minds clean and steady, you must accept pain and suffering, pain and poverty. Geez. The more the pain, the more the gain. And no pain, no gain. Okay, so that's 43. Number 44. By study of spiritual books comes communion with one's chosen deity. Okay, so here's a very important point. Any spiritual practice that leads to communicating with God in whatever form you choose, that is the right thing to do. So Patanjali doesn't say it doesn't matter what religion you are. You could even be a member of a false religion and still acquire the vision of your chosen deity. Number 45. By total surrender to God, Samadhi is attained. So, going backwards, if you go into the state of samadhi, that means that somehow you've totally surrendered to God. And if it's equal one way, it's equal the other way. The world itself is God. All that is outside us is God. When we dedicate our lives to the benefit of humanity, we have dedicated ourselves to God. Whatever we can do can easily be transformed into worship by our attitude. So you don't have to go to church, okay? Yogananda had very sophisticated advice when he said, always talk to somebody about God. Now, what he meant by that was to talk to people about their God. Because people are, and even people that are atheists want to make their life better. So to talk to people that are atheists, you talked about making life better. Okay? Here's what he said about Shivananda. Convert every work into yoga with the magic wand of right attitude. Many of us are interested in instant samadhi. Well, we can have instant samadhi right here and now without waiting for the kundalini to be aroused or move to the Astasnga chakra if we dedicate ourselves completely. And in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, okay, normally we want everything, name, fame, money, and we become surrounded by these wants. In India, proverb says, if a man is interested in weaving, he shouldn't keep a monkey for a pet. If he does whatever he weaves some cloth and leaves it for a moment, the monkey will cut off at least 100 strands. In the same way, if a person is interested in peace, why should he or she have wants and possession? They can never go together. No religion, no prophet, no saint has ever said one can have both peace and wants. Okay. But Swami Satchidananda also says you can have things. Just don't be attached to them. That's what he means by this. So if you're doing things to get name, fame, and wealth, then somehow you have to be unattached to them. And so it requires a very specific way of looking at things if you want to have both possessions and the lack of desire for them. And they have to be understood in context. It's difficult. So he gives a hint of how to do this. Do everything, this is what Swami Satchidananda says, do everything in my name, then you will get peace and joy. If you really understand that, he says understand, okay, so really understand, there is no reason even to read any more of these sutras. And then he goes on to say, so we're talking about these virtues, non-stealing, okay, by non-greediness you get to know your past and your future even. By practicing just these virtues, all the rest follow. If one is perfected, so we're talking non-greediness is perfected, all the rest will follow. If one is perfected, concentration, meditation, and even samadhi will come. When even one virtue becomes our nature, the mind becomes clean and tranquil. There is no need to practice meditation. We will automatically be meditating always. And so this meditating always means the mind is concentrated in the here and now. And so that when the peace and joy that is always flooding into your mind, and that you feel that you've achieved that, why would you even think of going anywhere else? You don't. You're always thinking, what can I do to make that energy and peace go up? And so you do the yogic act. Okay, you know that the yogic act works. You've had confirmation of it. You do something and the result comes, and if the time between you do it and the time that you get the result is separated by some time, that doesn't even matter if you really understand the time frame. Okay, so that's 46. So now he starts to talk about, okay, so he talked about the yamas and niyamas, okay? Asana is a steady, comfortable posture. So this is where Hatha Yoga comes in, when you stretch and manipulate the body. The purpose of doing that is so you can sit still in an upright position for a long time. It doesn't say you have to sit on the floor, you sit in a chair. If you go to the temple, that Vivekananda started in North Hollywood, okay, the Vedanta temple. If you go in there, the chairs that were there, this was years, I just went there recently again, and now they have benches, but the chairs that were there had very close together, and they would block you in so you couldn't fall over. So this is the asana, and this is how you adapt it. Now people do Hatha Yoga, and they're able to sit quite comfortably in these chairs, in the benches. In order to achieve such a meditative pose, we may practice many preliminary cultural poses. This is why Hatha Yoga was created. People trying to sit quietly found they couldn't. They encountered pain, stiffness, bile, gas, etc. What is the reason for these things, and how can we get rid of them? They realized it was due to toxins from eating the wrong foods at the wrong times and in the wrong quantities. What is good food that won't leave toxins? What should the limit be? What is the proper time to eat? They formed the yogic diet, free of meat, fish, eggs, stimulants, and excessive use of spices. The next problem was what to do with the toxins already inside the body. They found that these toxins could be gotten rid of by squeezing the body in all different directions. Okay, for example, they found the way to clean the liver, spleen, and intestines was by doing the forward bending pose, Paschimottanasana, which is the bending forward and crushing the stomach a bit. If this wasn't enough, they decided Yoga Mudra in order to crush it even more. If toxins were still present, they came up with Mayurasana, the peacock pose, where you put your arms together and you lean forward on those, and the arms press into the stomach. If this wasn't still enough, they created Uddiyana Bandha, the stomach lift, and Nali, the stomach churning. If the spine was stiff, they didn't want to move, they employed postures that bend it forward, backwards, sidewards, and upside down. And so he says the truth of this is always current. Although other things lose their value according to time, gold is always the same. Okay, number 47, by lessening the natural tendency for restlessness and by meditating on the infinite, posture is mastered. Okay, so that so this is in context, is talking about the asana again. Okay. And there's another city which we'll talk about how you can accentuate this, and this is the Kurma Samyana. Number 48, thereafter one is undisturbed by the dualities. Okay, the dualities, positive, negative, hot, cold, they fall away. And they fall away even while when you're conscious. Okay, so that firm posture being acquired, the movements of inhalation and exhalation should be controlled. This is pranayama. That's number 49. 50. The modifications of the life breath are either external, internal, or stationary. They are to be regulated by space, time, and number, and these are long or short. Okay. This is completely all the statements about pranayama that Patanjali makes, other than to briefly mention earlier. So this is 1/100 of the 200 sutras. And there are innumerable pranayamas. You just need to Google pranayama and you'll begin to see the complexity of them all. Okay. That's all. These two. And one of the reasons for that is that pranayama should be studied with somebody that knows it. Pranayama means the science of the breath, or the prana. Breath and prana are not the same. I have a number of videos about that, and you can put them. You can go Google them yourself. Okay. By regulating the prana, we regulate our minds, because the two always go together. Well, not quite. When you're doing the Hamsa mantra, the Hamsa mantra is the study of the sound of the breath. When you breathe in very quietly, the breath still makes a sound. When you breathe in, the sound is so, and it's caused by the wind passing over the vocal cords very slowly. When you exhale, the sound of the breath is ha. Okay, so there's a Soham prana, and there's the Hamsa prana. Different ways the energy goes up, and you can study both of those for lifetimes even. Okay, so I could feel the energy rising up inside my being. Okay, the path of the prana is to go up the spine, go over the top of the head, and come to the third eye. And then later it goes on up to the 1,000-petal lotus. Okay, the breath comes up and goes out of the mouth or out of the nose. Different pathway. So the breath and the prana are different. They're the same until the throat chakra, and then one goes up over the head, over the up to the Muladhara, up to the base of the spine, and then to the third chakra. Okay, so that's different than the breath coming out of the mouth or out of the nose. So that's where the difference, and Patanjali, the best pranayams are the ones that make that distinction. Okay, number 51. So now he's saying there's 3 different types of pranas in the first 2, and they're innumerable. There's a 4th kind of prana that occurs during concentration on an internal or external object. Okay, so state of samadhi, the definition is the observer, active observation, the thing being observed. When that concentration on that object becomes intense, the breath stops. Well, so technically this is a 3rd statement about pranayama, but not really. It's about the state of concentration, because you're not paying attention to the breath, and the breath stops. That's how you know that you're concentrating. Here, Swatsananda talks about the 4th type of prana happens automatically. We do not have to concentrate on retention of breath here, because it will stop automatically just by concentrating the mind on a chosen object or idea. So here's the example he gives to kind of explain it. Normally we're expending a lot of energy, so more must be constantly being put into the systems, and that's the breath. It's like we drive a car, ignition, horn, indicator lights, etc. all take current from the battery, which is thus being drained. At the same time, the dynamo within the engine compartment produces more current, so the battery retains its life. If the dynamo puts in too much current, the battery overheats and dies. But there is a cutout that takes care of this, disconnecting the dynamo from the battery before it can overheat. Even though the dynamo continues to produce current, it won't go into the battery. Unfortunately, we don't have a cutout. There is nothing to limit us but ourselves. When we switch off the engine and park the car, there is no wastage of energy from the battery, no need to put more energy in. In the same, when we talk to one another, we use up our human electricity, the prana, and have to put more in. Our breathing system is the dynamo. Okay, so the lungs and heart are the engine that creates the prana. That's the dynamo. Okay, we inhale in order to take in more prana to maintain the battery at a certain level. If we don't talk, there is no need to breathe in so much. Also, if we move our limbs, we must put in more energy. If we keep the body still, we conserve energy, but still the mind moves. So the mind is a consumer of prana. A little energy, so we have to breathe in. If we do not even think, the body stays still, okay, and we don't talk, there's no need for energy. Okay, kumbhaka, the retention of the breath, is automatically achieved. When you're concentrating intently on something, an object, so that the mind even stops functioning, and it stops functioning because you are one with the object. The mind is no longer active. You are there. You are that object. You don't need to have the mind in order to be the object. Okay. Okay, so here now he's talking about this. He talks about the same Surya Mullar, and he's a famous Indian saint. Whenever the mind goes, the prana follows. They are inseparable. If the mind is controlled first, the breath is controlled. But which is subtler, mind or breath? Which is easier to handle, a subtle thing or a gross one? Well, the mind is the gross thing. So the prana gets controlled by controlling the mind, which controls the prana. To keep ice in its place, we just have to put it down. For water, which has been melted ice, we need some sort of vessel. But for steam, even that is not enough. A covered cylinder is needed. Even though ice, water, and steam are one and the same compound, they are in different stages. Similarly, it is easier to control prana in a grosser manifestation, the mind, than a subtle one, or the physical body. It is very scientific, gradual, and easy. Absolutely. If you control the prana, as a result of controlling the prana, I'm adding, the veil over the inner light is destroyed. Okay, so here's what Satyananda says. Patanjali now comes to the benefit of pranayama. We destroy the veil that covers the inner light. Prakasa, the light within, is covered by a veil of mental darkness. What is the best way to remove a veil? By pulling the threads out one by one until it exists no more. So if you're pulling threads, it's a process. It takes time. Okay. So really, what the best spiritual practice is the one that removes the threads the fastest. Okay. And so did that say what practice is best? No. The intention is the practice that you use that works the fastest is the best. You don't care what anybody else's practice is like. You only care that you have the fastest practice for you. Okay. So a mental procedure that you understand and use is going to work the fastest. That's absolutely the conclusion that you should come to. On 53. And the mind becomes fit for concentration. So you're doing pranayama, and you concentrate on an object, and now the mind is ready to concentrate. Okay. Okay, 54. When the senses withdraw themselves from the objects and imitate, as it were, the nature of the mind stuff, this is pratyahara. Pratyahara, okay, so we hear this word for the first time. It means removal from the levers of the senses, isolation of the mind from the reality. Okay, so let's talk about that just a little bit. Pratyahara says, okay, now, suppose you're reading a book and somebody walks into the room, but you don't even hear them. You're so intently reading the book, and they talk to you. At least initially, you don't even hear the words. The words were said. They went into the ear. The sound did. It vibrated, but the mind even though the mind, part of the mind vibrates with that sound doesn't come to your consciousness. That's isolation of the sound of hearing. Okay, so pratyahara is removal of awareness of the senses. The senses are still there, they're still operating, because when you come out of that, the senses are still there and they're still active. Okay, pratyahara leads to meditation. So if you're meditating on some mantra or something, the attention to the mantra becomes complete. So you don't need the other senses, even though it may use the sense of sound. Okay, so you're saying Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and then you stop saying it and you repeat it in the mind. What just happened to the sense of sound? You're still saying it, but the sound is not leaving the mind, as it were. It's not, so it's more internal. Okay, so that's meditation. So here we go. When the senses withdraw themselves from the objects, okay, so this is actually withdrawing attention from the mechanics of the sense itself, like the sense of hearing, and imitate, as it were, the nature of the mind stuff. So you're saying the mantra, and you're imitating the mind stuff. So the mind is actually saying the mantra, but it's not external. This is pratyahara. With pranayama, the mind is still not completely fit, because there are other things that will try to pull the mind here and there, namely the senses. And that's exactly true. When you're doing meditation at the beginning, thoughts will come and disturb your saying the mantra, silently even, and you'll be thinking about something else. Well, that means only that your mind is not concentrating on the mantra. Okay, and try to put, namely the senses. They will always tell the mind, here's a wonderful thing in this showcase. Come on, why not buy it? Or do you smell that wonderful odor? Get ready, wash your hands. Some nice things are being cooked. So that smell of the food being cooked draws your mind away from what you were thinking. The mind might even be quiet, but the nose won't allow it to remain so. And the moment the nose says something is being prepared, so you're sitting meditating in the smell of food cooking. And the tongue says, the saliva says, oh, and the eyes say, can I have a look at it? We must have a good reign over these turbulent senses. So he talks about the imagery of Krishna and Arjuna in the battlefield, where Krishna is driving the chariot, and the chariot is compared to the body, and the 5 white horses are compared to the senses. The senses are like a mirror, turned outward they reflect the outside, turned inward they reflect the pure light. By themselves the senses are innocent, but when allowed to turn outside, allowed, okay, is the key word here. You allow your mind to run amok. They attract everything and transfer those messages to the mind, making it restless. Okay, if the mind is restless, you cannot control the Kundalini. turned inward, they find peace by taking the form of the mind itself. The senses are, in effect, a gateway that allows externals to come into the mind. For example, if we look at a cabinet, we can only understand it as a cabinet if our mind takes that form of the cabinet. This is the law of perception. I'll use that law to perceive the self within. That's why when we concentrate on something holy, the mind takes that form. When we have sense control, we only allow the mind to take the forms we want. So, in some ways, this is telling you how long the road is. You must become in control of your mind and allow the mind to only have the thoughts that you want it to have. Then your power of concentrate becomes infinite. Oh, well, here we go, number 55. Then follows supreme mastery over the senses. There isn't any other way. You have to be in control of the senses, and you train the mind by doing meditation to show you that you have control over the senses. That ends book 2. But I'm going to go just a little bit further and talk about Samadhi. Okay, so we haven't talked getting to Samadhi, and this is the book 3 is on the Siddhis, or the accomplishments. Okay. Okay, so that the one of the things that he says in book 3 is he's not going to comment on every sutra. Okay, and there's a reason for that. Okay. I will comment on most of them. The name of this chapter is called Vibhuti Pada, or the portion on accomplishments. Vibhuti, when you see Shiva devotees, they will take their right hand, they will put it into holy ash, and they will rub it across their forehead, leaving 3 lines of white or gray. That's stuff, the holy ash is ash that is left after you burn things in the holy fire. So the idea behind Vibhuti is something that has been reduced to its final essence, the ash, is one way of looking at it. Okay, so the very first chapter on the book 3 is Dharana is binding of the mind to one place, object, or idea. So this could be a mantra, it could even be a visual thing. Okay, when you have the law of attraction, people coming out and saying, let's make a vision board, that is an attempt to tie the mind to what you want. Okay. Okay, so pratyahara leads to dharana. In other words, in dharana, you're training the mind. Okay. It is the beginning of meditation, not the end. And you compare this in some traditions, like in the meditation in the Christian tradition, is to think about some object, some holy object. This is really just dharana. Okay. Normally we see our mind running here and there. When we try to fix it on one thing, within a fraction of a second we see it somewhere else. So he gives an example. Imagine you wanted to just fix your mind on a beautiful rose. The best practice would be to keep a physical rose in front of you as you begin, because it's easier for the mind. You open your eyes and you see the rose. Okay, so you make a short loop. concrete objects, symbols or idols, are very helpful for our beginning practice. So the process is you start with something gross, and then you transfer, as you get better, to something that's more subtle. Okay. So towards that, this is where the practice of Tradik or gazing also comes in handy. Tradik is actually gazing at something sometimes without even blinking. Don't strain the eyes, just look at your object as long as you can. You'll be able to look longer if you put your mind on the idea behind the object, how beautiful it is, what a great gift has come from a thorny bush, etc. Like that, associated ideas will come when you get involved in these things. Even the gaze will be forgotten, but you will still be gazing without blinking. Don't try to gaze just for the purpose of gazing. If you do that, the eyes will get tired quickly. So, Tradik means concentration on an external object for a long period, quote-unquote long. After a while, you can gently close the eyes and try to bring the mental picture of the picture outside. So, you're looking at the rose, and your mind stops jumping around. Now, you close the eyes and you try and recreate the image exactly as you saw it in front of you. And if your mind starts to wander, you open your eyes, you look at the rose. Oh, did my image of the rose change? Well, it might have. So you reconnoiter, you recollect, you go back in and you image it again with your eyes closed. So gradually you increase the ability of the mind to keep the image constantly in front of you. Or a mantra, different things. Okay, as you think, so you become. If you think of the rose, the mind will take the form of the rose. After a while, you'll easily be able to see it within without the aid of any physical object outside. At that stage, you no longer need altars and this and that. Oh, really? Well, yeah, really. So if you have a mental image, okay, now we're going to take that mental image and put some psychic energy into it. And you can actually do this. Okay? So this is how the siddhis begin. Okay, so you can see the image of a rose. Okay, here's something to test. Now that you have the image of the rose, just sit. Imagine the rose as you have become accustomed to it. And breathe in. And hold the energy and hold the image right here. As you hold the image, it gets harder and harder to hold the breath. But if you do, and you imagine the holding the breath causes energy to go into the picture of the rose that you have in your mind, something wonderful happens. The rest of so when you're not doing that, eventually you will start to see roses in your life. You will go walking and then all of a sudden there will be a rose. You'll go to a restaurant, you'll sit down at a table, there's a rose exactly like you imaged it. Oh. All of a sudden, you begin to realize the power that is within you. Okay. Okay, so dharana is having an image, okay? Number two, dhyana is a continuous flow of cognition. Actually, it's a continuous flow of energy towards that object, the rose. Okay, and so he talks about the beautiful example in the Hindu scriptures. Continuous flow. They say it's like pouring oil from one pot into another. You have a pot here, and you have a vessel of oil, and the continuous stream comes out of the lip of the top pot into the mouth of the bottom pot. That's what meditation on an object is. That continuous flow. And when you have that, you can feel the energy of that flow. When you're doing the image of the rose up here, and you're feeling that the breath is going into the rose, the prana, that's the feeling. After a long practice of dharana, gradually the flow condition gets a little longer and becomes dhyana. Okay, so he gives some clues on how to measure your progress. It seems like the period of meditation happens in a very short period. Say you come and sit for meditation at 4:30. Meditation is assigned for an hour. The bell rings at 5:30. If you feel, who rang the bell this soon? I just sat down 5 minutes ago. That's a sign that meditation has become established. Time has no meaning in meditation, as space also is lost. If you break the meditation, all of a sudden you may wonder, what happened to my body? And so then you have to come back to body consciousness. Okay. Well, finally we get to samadhi. How much time passes between the time of dharana to dhyana to samadhi? It could be days, months, years. He'll talk about that later in this. Okay. Samadhi is the same meditation when there is a shining of the object alone, as if devoid of form. So let's talk about this rose. You've been concentrating on the rose, and then you've been meditating on the rose, and then all of a sudden, you and the idea of the rose are one and the same. Now it's hard. He says it's hard to talk about that, and it is, because the mind is not there. The mind was bringing you closer and closer to the idea, the mental image of the rose, and then all of a sudden, you're the rose. But you don't know it. Well, because the mind's not there. You can't know anything on a mental level until you come back out of the state of samadhi. And then you say, oh, I and the rose were one. Past tense. Along with that state of samadhi, afterwards, the recognition that you went into that place, your energy goes way up. A huge, huge amount. Ramakrishna says about the state of samadhi, he says, spiritual life begins after Samadhi. Before then, you're just practicing. Okay. So one of the things that becomes apparent is that all of a sudden you become you become aware of whether somebody's realized or not. Well, one of the things that you have to see, is the energy statement from other spiritual teachers. I was talking to Matt today about the previous video. And I was talking about in that video about Yogani and saying, well, sorry, Yogani. And Matt says, well, you know, I knew before because I've had the state of Samadhi and I could see the energy in him. And I knew that he didn't have it. He knows things, but he doesn't have the state of Samadhi. So again, Yogani, sorry. Okay, so I think we're going to leave it at this today because the state of Samadhi leads immediately to testing that state on your reality that you see. And you will inevitably develop powers. You won't say like Yogani, oh, God didn't mean you to have the cities. Well, sorry. Okay, the whole third book of the Yoga Sutras, 1/4 of the entire thing on yoga is on developing cities. If Patanjali didn't want you to know about this, would he have told you? And he would have told you, oh, like Yogani, oh, well, you shouldn't, God doesn't mean you to have them. No, he doesn't say that. Okay? The very next sentence talks about samyana. The rest of the other 50, talks about applying the state of samyana on getting cities. Oh. It's inevitable from the state of Samadhi to have the cities, some of them. From past lives, he talks about it in the 4th chapter. So, you can tell who's realized by the discussion of the cities. Even Swami Satchidananda, he says you have to be careful. And he did it. He had experiences that told him that he shouldn't display them before he came to the United States. And I'll talk about those maybe. But even he said, oh, go out and get the city not to have hunger. I'll read you the statement that he made. So he's saying go get them, but he's extremely careful about how he does it. Okay. And we'll talk about that. Okay. So suffice it to say, I've told you exactly what the classical definition of Samadhi is, how to get into it, how to determine what it is, how to see your progress. You don't even have to see the energy that I have to know that I know something about this. or I'm saying I'm doing, then you can practice this and you will see the results for yourself. And then there's no question that you will know. Okay? Thank you, and I'll see you at the next time. The Siddhis.